My name is Claire Whitmore, and on mornings like this, the air smells like victory. The sun spills over the rows of blooming hydrangeas outside my office window, painting the leaves in gold. I stand there for a second, fingertips grazing the smooth edge of my silk blouse, coffee warming my other hand. Everything in this room feels intentional. The reclaimed wood desk, the potted fiddle-leaf fig, the scent of fresh lavender from my own garden. Just beyond the patio. On the desk, my phone buzzes. The name flashing across the screen makes me freeze for half a beat. Melissa Carter. She used to live 2 houses down from me. Back then, she'd wave politely in public and snicker behind my back in private. I pressed the green button, more out of curiosity than kindness. Claire? Hi, it's been a while. Listen, I have this big charity event at my new place, and I need help with my garden. I heard you're still doing that landscaping thing. That landscaping thing. I almost laugh. Outside my office, a team of 15 employees in matching polo shirts is loading trucks with custom planters for a commercial client. My name is on all of it, contracts, payrolls, the franchise license. Sure, Melissa. I say, keeping my tone smooth. Why don't you come by my office? We can talk in person. I can already picture her face when she walks in here. I was 23 when I moved into that little rental on Willow Street, the one with the peeling white fence and a yard that looked like it had given up. It was early spring, and the soil was still cold under my nails when I started digging. I'd saved for months to buy seeds, a few saplings, and a set of secondhand tools from a yard sale. It wasn't much, but it was mine. That's when the whispers started. I'd be crouched in the dirt, sweat stinging my eyes, and I'd hear them. Melissa, her sister-in-law, and a couple of neighbors, standing at the end of my driveway. Does she think she's Martha Stewart? One would say. Honestly, it looks worse now, another would add, laughing. I tried to ignore it, but every comment found its way into my chest like a thorn. My hands shook sometimes when I planted, not from the work, but from the humiliation. One Sunday afternoon, I was kneeling by the fence when my grandmother, Evelyn Whitmore, came by. She was carrying a small box. Inside, wrapped in an old linen cloth, was a worn silver trowel. This was mine when I started my first garden, she said. I turned it over in my hands, noticing the engraving on the handle. Patience grows everything worth keeping. They don't see what you see, Claire, she told me. But that doesn't mean it's not there. Don't plant for them. Plant for you. Something shifted in me that day. I stopped trying to prove anything and started working quietly, obsessively. I read library books on soil composition, sketched layouts in a spiral notebook, and experimented with planting cycles. When the flowers finally bloomed that summer, they weren't perfect, but they were alive. And so was I. By the end of that year, I'd made a decision. If they thought my garden was a joke, I'd turn it into the punchline they never saw coming. I didn't start with much. Just that silver trowel, a $200 credit card limit, and the kind of stubbornness you only get from being underestimated. During the day, I worked as a receptionist at a plumbing supply store. At night, I pored over library books and YouTube tutorials about landscape architecture, irrigation systems, and plant biology. My kitchen table became a war zone of soil samples, seed packets, and coffee-stained graph paper. My first real break came when I answered an online ad. Small front yard needs makeover. Budget, $150. It wasn't glamorous, a 10 by 12 patch of grass in front of a dentist's office, but I took it. I stayed up late drawing a design, scavenged leftover plants from a nursery's clearance section, and finished the job in 2 days. When the dentist handed me an envelope with $200 inside instead of $150, I realized I could do this. That's when I met Margaret Hayes, a retired landscape architect who'd stopped by the office one afternoon to drop off catalogs. She caught me sketching between calls and asked, "Who taught you to draw like that?" When I told her I was self-taught, she leaned in. "You've got the eye. I can teach you the rest, if you're willing to work harder than you've ever worked in your life." I said yes before she finished the sentence. For the next 3 years, I worked under her wing, learning everything from stonework to contract negotiations. She introduced me to wholesale suppliers, explained how to price my services without undervaluing myself, and most importantly, taught me how to run a business like a business, not a hobby. It wasn't easy. There were nights I cried in my truck because an order arrived wrong or the rain washed out a freshly planted bed. Clients canceled at the last minute. Equipment broke. I pulled 16-hour days and still worried about rent. But there were victories too. My first full backyard project. My first commercial contract for a local cafe. The day a regional magazine featured one of my designs in a spread titled, "Hidden Gems of Our City." Online, I kept it quiet. Social media posts were vague. A photo of a flower here, a sunset there. To my neighbors, I was still Claire with the little garden. That suited me just fine. By year 5, I wasn't just booked out, I was scaling. I registered my business as Whitmore Landscaping and Design, hired my first crew, and opened a tiny one-room office on the edge of town. That room eventually turned into 3, then 5, until we outgrew the building entirely. And all the while, the people who once laughed, they had no idea the woman they'd mocked was building an empire right under their noses. Melissa arrived exactly 5 minutes late, just enough to make it look casual, though I could see the flicker of nerves in her eyes when she stepped through the glass doors. My office smelled faintly of fresh eucalyptus. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed a view of our central nursery, rows of color-bursting flowers, ornamental trees, and an active crew in green polo shirts unloading materials. The walls were lined with framed photos, not of me, but of our projects: rooftop gardens, luxury estate courtyards, public park renovations. "Wow, this is nice," she said, her voice catching just a little. She glanced at the polished walnut reception desk, the shelves stacked with industry awards, the giant living wall of ivy behind me. I gestured toward the conference table. "Have a seat." She settled into the leather chair, smoothing her skirt like she was suddenly aware of the dirt on her shoes. "So, I'm hosting this big charity gala next month, and the yard is, well, frankly, a disaster. I need someone with a professional touch." I folded my hands. "Melissa, do you know what we do here?" She blinked. "You do a landscaping?" A slow smile spread across my face. "We don't just do landscaping. Whitmore Landscaping and Design is the largest woman-owned landscaping franchise in the state. We design, install, and maintain properties across 3 counties, employ over 50 people, and manage a portfolio worth millions." Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. "I own this company," I continued, letting the words hang. "Every truck outside, every design on that wall, every contract in this building, they all have my name on them." Melissa's gaze darted around the room, as if the furniture itself might confirm my story. "I had no idea," she said finally. "I know," I replied, keeping my tone even. "You never ask." There was a long pause, the kind that feels like a crack in the air. She tried to recover with a laugh. "Well, isn't this funny? All those years you with your little garden, and now." "It's not funny," I said, not unkindly but firmly. "It's called work. Work you once called a waste of time." Her cheeks flushed pink. She shifted in her chair. "Claire, I was young. We were all cruel." I finished for her. Silence again. She looked down at her hands, then back at me. "I need this event to be perfect. Will you take the job?" I leaned back in my chair, watching her squirm just a little. "Maybe. But if we work together, it's on my terms. Full creative control, no last-minute changes, and respect for my team, every single person, from the foreman to the intern." She nodded quickly, almost too quickly. "Of course. Absolutely." As she stood to leave, she glanced once more at the living wall behind me, her eyes lingering on the engraved plaque at its base. "Patience grows everything worth keeping." She didn't know it, but that was my grandmother's trowel inscription. I'd had it etched there as a reminder, not for clients, but for me. When the door closed behind her, I allowed myself one small, private smile. Tomorrow, she'd bring her high heels into my dirt. And this time, she'd walk carefully. Melissa came back the next morning, this time with a folder of property photos. She set them on the conference table like a peace offering. "It's bad," she admitted. "The lawn's patchy, The flower beds are overrun, and there's this hideous chain-link fence along the back. I need it transformed in 3 weeks. I flipped through the photos slowly. Cracked pavers, dying shrubs, a lonely bird bath leaning to one side. It wasn't just bad, it was neglected. "Melissa," I said, meeting her eyes, "this job can be done, but not the way you think. My team will redesign every square inch front to back, ground to sky. That means removing that fence, reshaping the beds, resodding the lawn, and installing lighting. It will cost more than what you probably budgeted." She hesitated. "How much more?" "Enough that you'll need to value it," I said evenly. "And there's something else." Her brows lifted. "What's that?" "Respect," I said. "For me, my team, and the craft. No micromanaging, no talking down to the crew, no cute little garden comments. You hired a company, not a hobbyist." Her cheeks colored again. "I understand. And one more thing," I added, leaning forward. "I want your event program to credit Whitmore Landscaping and Design as the official designer. Not in tiny print at the bottom, prominently." She nodded quickly, but I didn't stop there. "And you're going to donate an additional percentage of your gala proceeds to the community garden project downtown. It funds workshops for kids who can't afford classes." Her lips parted like she wanted to argue, but she closed them just as fast. "Fine. Done." I studied her for a moment. Years ago, she wouldn't have agreed to my terms. She wouldn't have even been in this office. Now, the balance had shifted. "When can you start?" she asked quietly. "Tomorrow," I said. "But you won't see the garden until the night of the gala. That's part of the deal." A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face, but she agreed. As she left, I thought about how different this conversation would have been if I'd caved all those years ago. If I'd let the mocking voices dictate my worth. But I didn't. And now I was setting the terms, not just for the garden but for how people treated me. And that, I realized, was the real transformation. The night of Melissa's gala, the house looked nothing like the photos she'd handed me weeks before. A sweeping stone pathway led guests through a garden alive with color and light. White hydrangeas framed the entrance, their blooms catching the glow of hidden uplights. In the backyard, soft strings of Edison bulbs stretched over a manicured lawn, guiding the eye to a fountain surrounded by lavender and ornamental grasses that swayed in the evening breeze. Guests stepped onto the patio and gasped. I stood off to the side with my crew, watching them take it all in, the quiet awe, the phones snapping pictures, the murmurs of "Who designed this?" Melissa, in a shimmering silver gown, clinked her glass for attention. "Before we begin, I want to acknowledge someone. This transformation was created by Whitmore Landscaping and Design, the finest in the business. Claire, would you come up here?" I walked up, feeling the weight of every step. Years ago, those same eyes had watched me from across a driveway with laughter. Tonight, they watched with respect. Melissa handed me the mic. I smiled, not at her, but at the crowd. When I started gardening, people told me it was a waste of time. But here's the thing about growth. It doesn't care if someone believes in it or not. It happens anyway, quietly, beneath the surface, until one day, it's impossible to ignore. The applause was warm, genuine. Later, as I packed up with my team, I slipped a hand into my pocket and felt the cool metal of my grandmother's trowel handle, the one I'd carried with me for every big project. Patience grows everything worth keeping. She'd been right all along. As we loaded the last truck, I glanced back at the glowing garden one final time. Years ago, they laughed at my little plot of dirt. Now they stood in the shadow of my empire.